The story of Hannah and Cassandra. Ever since my father married Cassandra, my life has never been the same. My name is Hannah, and I am no longer the innocent child everyone thinks I am. A year ago, my mother died. Cancer took her away in less than 3 months, when I was just 12 years old. That was too short a time to say goodbye. And from that moment on, everything changed. My father decided to marry Cassandra, a beautiful, talented woman with an impeccable lifestyle. She worked in finance at a large investment firm in Chicago, where my father also worked. Cassandra brought with her a flawless beauty and something I couldn't name, but I knew it could replace my mother, at least in my father's eyes. One day while I was preparing dinner with my father, she walked into the house in a chic black dress, her hair shining blonde. She smiled at me as if everything was fine, but I knew very well nothing was fine. "Little sister Hannah, what are you doing today?" Cassandra asked, her voice sweet. I just nodded, not wanting to answer. Even though I didn't like Cassandra, I still tried to pretend that I was fine. But in my heart, there was an inexplicable hatred. She had replaced my mother, not only in this house, but also in my father's heart. "We're having a party this weekend," Cassandra announced, scanning her closet as if taking stock of everything in the house. "Get yourself a nice outfit, Hannah. There's bound to be a lot of important people." I only heard about it, but my heart was filled with indignation. The party was not to celebrate the family, but for Cassandra to show off her ego, to brag about what she had. She always found a way to highlight herself in front of everyone. That day, I found myself in a beautiful dress she bought for me. The beautiful clothes, the expensive gifts, it was all fake. Everything was just to fool others, to make them think that my family was happy. But I felt nothing but emptiness. I wasn't the only one who felt this tension. My father, a strong man with a solid career, was always immersed in his work and oblivious to what was going on. Whenever I tried to talk to him, Cassandra would appear, tactfully interrupting. One time, when I was preparing for a school play, a rare opportunity for me to really shine, Cassandra made me give up. She told me that the company's big gala was a top priority. "This is your big opportunity, Hannah," she told me, her voice sweet but sharp. "You can't miss it." I felt anger rising in me, but I just kept quiet and complied. Even though deep down, I knew I was never her priority. She just wanted me to be a tool, a part of her perfect picture. After a long time, I began to discover dark secrets. One day, while rummaging through my father's office, I found strange papers. Documents signed by my father and Cassandra, and some investment contracts that seemed very strange. I didn't understand everything, but I knew that something was wrong. My life changed forever when I found out the truth. My mother knew about my father's affair with Cassandra before she died. She hired a private investigator to follow them. It was all documented in a thick file containing evidence of my father's betrayal and lies. One day, while I was preparing for Cassandra's party, I received a box from my mother. Inside were photos, hotel receipts, and financial reports that my mother had compiled. This evidence was the nightmare I never thought I would have to face. The evidence of this betrayal forced me to make a huge decision. I could have exposed the truth and made my father and Cassandra pay, but I didn't. I decided to take control of my life in a different way. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to take back what was mine, what my mother had built for me. Since the day I discovered the truth, my life has changed completely. I am no longer the innocent girl I used to be. Every step, every word, every decision I make is carefully calculated. My mother taught me patience, and now I understand that everything needs to be carefully planned. Even though I could feel the tension rising with each conversation between my father and Cassandra, I remained calm. Instead of confronting them directly, I decided to step back, stay quiet, and observe. My father remained immersed in his work, in the seminars and social gatherings that Cassandra organized, while I quietly gathered every bit of information, every little piece of evidence to perfect my plan. One day, while I was doing my homework in the living room, I heard the door to my father's study open. Cassandra walked in, holding a glass of red wine. She looked at me for a moment, her sharp eyes scanning me as if trying to guess what I was thinking. But I knew that nothing could escape my careful observation. "You seem to have grown up, Hannah," she said, her tone sarcastic, but with a hint of surprise. "You know everything about this family, don't you?" I didn't respond right away. The feeling of being controlled and watched didn't scare me. I was used to it. Finally, I said softly, "I'm just figuring out what's really important, Cassandra." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she just smirked and turned to leave, but not without leaving behind a hidden threat. "You won't find it easy, Hannah. Things aren't always what they seem." I didn't feel fear, just a stronger urge. I was not a child anymore, and I wouldn't let Cassandra continue to hurt my family. The next day, I decided to meet with my mother's financial manager, whom I had been keeping in secret contact with for the past few months. They helped me collect important financial evidence, documents that I knew would be a strategic weapon against my father and Cassandra. "We have everything we need," said Mark, the manager, as I sat down across from him in a small cafe where no one would recognize us. "We just need time to hit their weak spots." I nodded. "Make sure everything is in place. We can't miss any details." Mark looked at me, his eyes lighting up as if he recognized the determination in my voice. "Are you ready for anything, Hannah?" I smiled coldly. It was ready a long time ago. Over the next few weeks, I began to penetrate every corner of this family life. During the day, I was a good girl, good at studying, always trying to please my father and Cassandra at every party, every event she organized. But at night, I transformed myself into a completely different person, someone who was ready to accept the truth and confront it. I gathered information from their conversations, documents that Dad had carelessly left in his office, evidence of shady financial dealings that Cassandra had tried to hide. I learned not only about the family business, but also about the plans Dad and Cassandra were making, the money they transferred to offshore accounts that they thought would never be discovered. And I also began to realize something else. Cassandra was not just my mother's replacement. She had her own agenda. She not only wanted power in this family, but she wanted to take everything that belonged to my mother. I could not let that happen. Finally, the moment I had been preparing for a long time came. On an evening with no important events, I decided to face my father and Cassandra directly. I knew if I didn't do this now, everything would be forever out of my control. Cassandra was standing in front of the liquor cabinet, a glass of red wine in her hand. She looked at me with a displeased expression as I entered the room. My father was sitting at his desk, his eyes still glued to his papers. But I knew he sensed the change in the atmosphere. "I have something to tell you," I said, my voice steady, but unable to hide the tension. Dad and Cassandra paused, looking at me. I didn't give them a chance to say anything, but continued. "I know everything. About the money that was diverted, about the documents you tried to hide, and about the secrets you thought would never be discovered." Cassandra's mouth fell open. She tried to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed her. My father fell silent, his expression changing dramatically as he realized that I not only knew, but had all the evidence necessary to expose the truth. "Dad," I continued, "I don't want any more fake relationships. Mom has left me everything I need to protect this family. Now it's time for me to take charge of my life." Cassandra's face hardened as I made my accusations. My father sat there, not saying a word, but his eyes said he knew he was no longer in control. Part of me felt a vague satisfaction, but the rest felt empty, because I knew that nothing could restore this family to what it was before. "You think you can fool me, Hannah?" Cassandra said, her voice starting to change, becoming sharper. "You think all that you've done will scare me?" I didn't answer right away, but looked straight into her eyes. She stood there, still holding her glass of wine, but I could tell she was shaking inside. My calmness was what she feared the most. "You still don't understand, Cassandra?" I said softly but firmly. "You're not the only one who can calculate. I know everything about the secret transfers, about the offshore accounts you opened. My mother knew everything, and she left me enough evidence to deal with you." My father remained silent, sitting there like a stranger. I could see the struggle in his eyes. He knew he could no longer hide. What I said was not a threat. It was a truth he could not deny. "Don't think you can control everything like that, Hannah," my dad finally said. His voice was soft but strained. "You don't understand everything that's going on." I walked over to his desk, straightened, and looked down at him. "I know better than you think. You're not the only one with power in this house anymore. You and Cassandra have ruined everything, but I won't let you continue to destroy what my mother built." Cassandra stood up, set her glass down on the table with a loud clack, and walked towards me. "Do you know what you're doing? Do you really think you can control everything?" She gave me a sarcastic smile, but her eyes were calculating. "You are mistaken, Hannah. We have much to lose. Don't play this game with me. If you think you can win, you will pay dearly." I wasn't afraid. I was prepared for anything. "You have nothing to lose, Cassandra, but I do. And I will protect everything my mother left me, even if it means war." She looked at me, the tension evident in her eyes. There was a long silence between us, as if the whole world had stopped. Then she turned and walked quickly towards the door, paused for a moment, and said in a low voice, "I won't win." The door closed with a loud click, leaving me and Dad alone in the room. I looked at him for a long time, not saying anything. The silence between us was so heavy that I could hear my heart pounding. "There's nothing you can do," my father said in a low voice, hoarse special, as if he were trying to convince himself more than me. "If you do that, there will be consequences. The company, the family, everything will collapse." "I don't care," I replied without hesitation. "What I care about is justice, and I won't let you keep manipulating things." My father bowed his head, looking down at the documents on the table. "You don't understand the whole situation. You don't know what happened between me and your mother." "I don't care," I replied, my voice firm. "All I know is that I will do anything to protect what is yours. And I won't let anyone deceive me again." I returned to my office, where I had spent the past month preparing for this battle. On the desk, the documents my mother had left me were neatly arranged, financial and legal evidence that I could use at any time. Each document was a weapon, each number a statement of truth that no one could deny. At night, when everything seemed quiet, I continued my work. I had detailed plans on how I would reveal these secrets to the company and society. I could not let Cassandra and Dad continue to deceive everyone. Anyone in this family could be an enemy, and I had to be ready to protect what my mother had worked so hard to build. The next day, I met with Mark and my mother's managers. We met in a secret room where no one could overhear. The plans were complete. I had all the evidence I needed to not only destroy Cassandra's reputation, but also blackmail my father. "We'll do this when the time is right," Mark said, looking at the documents on the table. "We have enough evidence to bring everything down, but we have to wait." I nodded, feeling tension rising in me. There's not much time left. The moment I had to face Dad and Cassandra was getting closer and closer. Every time I thought about the plan, I felt a strong urge, but I couldn't deny that there was a part of me that was scared. This was going to change everything, not just for Dad and Cassandra, but for me and Mom's company. But I knew I couldn't stop. With thorough preparation and determination, I know I am ready to enter this battle. And no matter the outcome, I will fight to the end to protect what my mother left behind, to protect the justice I deserve. My life became increasingly tense and complicated. Everything revolved around one point, one single moment, when I decided to expose the truth. But I knew that to achieve my goal, I could not act hastily. Every plan, every step had to be calculated precisely. That day, I stood in front of my dad's bedroom door, holding the detailed dossier Mark and I had been preparing for the past week. Part of me wanted to rush in and spill the beans, but another part of me hesitated, worried about the possible consequences. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Come in, Hannah," my dad said, his voice sounding tired. I walked in, still holding the documents. Dad looked up, his eyes sad. I knew he had been waiting for this, but he probably didn't expect me to do it so decisively. "What's wrong, son?" Dad asked, his voice gentle as if he was trying to reassure me. I placed the file on the table in front of him and looked straight into his eyes. "I want to talk about what happened with Mom and the company," I began, my voice firm, no longer hesitant. My father sighed softly, silently flipping through the documents. With each passing minute, the atmosphere in the room grew more tense. He said nothing, just turned the pages, his eyes as if trying to deny the truth. "You did this," my father finally said, his voice filled with disappointment. "You went looking for these things without thinking of the consequences." I was silent. But in my heart, his words could not shake me. "I am only protecting what you left me, and I will not let anyone, not even you and Cassandra, destroy it." Dad looked up, his eyes fighting with himself. "You don't understand the situation. Your mother did this for a reason. This whole company, this whole family, can't be broken by what you found." I refused to back down. "You say that, but what Mom did, she prepared everything for me. I don't just want the truth to be known. I want the traitors to pay." We both stood still for a moment, sensing the tension in the air. My father bowed his head, silently signing the documents I handed him. I knew he knew this was the price to pay, but he also knew he could no longer shirk his responsibility. "Okay," he said in a low voice, hoarse special. "What do you want to do next?" I smiled slightly, not out of joy, but out of determination. "I won't go alone. I'll bring this evidence to the company's board of directors and the authorities. We'll go public." My father stood up, walked to the window and looked out, his eyes filled with despair. "You can't do this, Hannah. You don't understand the consequences." "I understand," I replied, my voice cold. "But I can't keep living a lie. I want justice, the justice my mother tried to protect." Dad said nothing more. He went back to his desk, picked up the phone, and started calling Cassandra. I didn't need to listen to understand what he was doing. She would be here any minute. When Cassandra entered the room, I could feel the tension in the air. She came in, her eyes sharp, trying to control her emotions. "I don't think I can handle all this, Hannah," Cassandra said in a sarcastic tone. I didn't answer right away, but looked straight at her. It felt like we were preparing for a real battle. "What you did to this family, to my mother's company, is unforgivable. I won't allow you to continue manipulating things." Cassandra gave a fake smile, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "Do you really think you can win?" She stepped closer to me and said in a low voice, "Hannah, you're too young to understand what's going on. Don't think you can control everything." I looked at her without fear. "It is not me who is in control. It is justice that will control everything." My father stood still, saying nothing, but I could feel the defeat in his body. Cassandra looked at him, then back at me, as if searching for a way to protest. But I knew things were beyond her control. "You don't know what you're doing," Cassandra said, her voice full of menace. "They won't stand by you." I just smiled, my eyes sharp. "We'll see." A few hours later, I was in the boardroom, where I was about to reveal everything I had gathered. Everyone in the room was silent, staring at me. as I placed the file on the table. The people I had once called my mother's colleagues were now faced with the undeniable truth. I opened the first file. Everything was carefully prepared, and it only took me a moment to bring it all down. One by one, I presented evidence of financial manipulation, illegal transfers from the family trust, and the deception that Cassandra and my father had perpetrated all along. The room fell silent. Some of the council turned away, unable to bear the truth. Some bowed their heads, awaiting the end. And I knew that at this point, nothing could be saved. The fight has begun, and I will not stop until the truth is known. Justice will prevail, not because I want revenge, but because I deserve it. The entire board sat in silence, staring at the documents I had presented. The tension in the air was so intense that it could be cut with a knife. Doubtful looks, surprise, and even fear began to spread. The people who had been my mother's colleagues were no longer the people behind her career. They looked at me as if I were a stranger. Not the child of Catherine, the founder and soul of this company. I turned around and looked into the eyes of each person in the council. Every face was filled with worry, but no one dared to speak up. Because they knew everything I said had a basis, and they could not deny this truth. One of the board members, Richard, my mother's former partner, was the first to break the silence. "Hannah, you can't do this. The company has been built over 3 generations, and we can't let it all fall apart over these few documents." I smiled, not out of joy, but because I realized he was trying to soften me. But I couldn't be subdued. "Mr. Richard, this company is more than just numbers. It's the values my mother built, and the traitors have no right to control it anymore." A few members of the council nodded, but no one dared to speak up. They all understood that I had enough power and evidence to turn the tables, and after a few seconds of silence, I continued. "With everything I have presented today, I will not let these fraudulent acts continue. If you do nothing, I will contact the authorities and make everything public. This company will be destroyed, and I will not let you continue to use it as a tool to manipulate and hide the truth." The room fell silent again. No one dared to object, because they all knew that if I did what I said, the company would face a serious crisis. They began to realize that I was not the weak little girl they knew. I had grown up, become stronger, and nothing could stop me. A few minutes later, Mr. Richard stood up, his face heavy. "Hannah, you're right. Things have gone too far, but we want to save this company. We'll support you, but you have to be sure you're ready for it." I looked at him, my eyes not filled with gratitude, but with determination. "Certainly, Mr. Richard. I am prepared for anything, and I will not stop until the truth is known." When the meeting ended, I walked out of the room, not because I felt victorious, but because I knew that this battle had only just begun. The tension was still there, but I had no regrets. I had done the right thing, and that would lead me to the next step. That evening, when I returned home, I found Cassandra standing in the living room doorway, her face full of anxiety. I walked in without saying hello, just looking at her for a long time. She couldn't hide the tension in her eyes. "Hannah," Cassandra said, her voice slightly worried. "You know what you've done, right? You can't undo anything. If you keep this up, none of us will win." I didn't answer right away, just stood there, looking at her. I was no longer the scared little girl she thought I was. "You think I'll compromise?" I asked again. Cassandra was silent for a moment, her eyes more bewildered than ever. "What have you done, Hannah? You don't understand the consequences." I smiled slightly, but there was no joy in it. "You have lived a lie for too long, Cassandra. It is time to face the truth, and no one can escape that, not even you." Cassandra looked at me, her eyes filled with anger and fear. "You don't know what you're doing," she said, and turned and walked away, her eyes still on me suspiciously. The next day, when I got to the office, I got a call from Mark. He informed me that the authorities had started investigating the case and asked for more documents. Everything was going according to plan. I sat in my office looking at the documents my mother had left behind. Just then, an email popped up on my screen. It was a notice from the company's board of directors, asking me to attend an emergency meeting in the afternoon. Things were going well. In the afternoon, when I entered the conference room, the atmosphere became stifling again. Everyone in the room was silent, and I could feel the anxiety in the air. The council members were all standing around. No one dared to look at me. "What are we going to do, Hannah?" Richard asked, his voice not as strong as before. "We've decided to support you, but you have to make sure everything is done properly." I stood up, my eyes never leaving them. "We will not back down. I want justice, not empty promises. You will not be able to lie anymore." Mr. Richard looked at me, then nodded, defeat written all over his face. "Then we'll do it your way. This fight is not over yet, but I have the best preparation and support from those who know the truth. And with all the evidence, I believe that no one can stop me." The next day, I woke up earlier than usual, my mind full of thoughts. Everything was going according to plan, but I knew the next step would be decisive. The board had agreed to cooperate, and the authorities had stepped in, but Cassandra was still clinging to her lies, trying to hold on to the power she had gained over the years. I couldn't give her any more time. With each passing minute, my tension grew. Since my mother's death, I had lived in silence, keeping my sadness and anger inside. But today, everything would change. The truth would come out, and those who betrayed my mother would face the consequences. When I arrived at the company in the morning, the atmosphere in the office seemed heavier than ever. The board members and senior managers had all received notice of the emergency meeting I had requested. The whole room was filled with anticipation. Everyone could feel the tension in the air, and yet I, standing before them, still felt no fear. "We have to deal with this now," I began, my voice cold and firm, without a hint of hesitation. "This company cannot continue to exist under the leadership of liars. Everything needs to change." Mr. Richard, whom I had once respected, now looked at me as if I were a stranger. He did not say anything immediately, but only looked down at the table, his eyes full of regret. "Are you sure, Hannah?" he asked, his voice dry, as if he were trying to deny everything I was about to reveal. I looked straight at him, without hesitation. "I have prepared for everything, and I cannot wait any longer. What my mother built cannot be destroyed by your greed." "She's grown up," another director, Anna, said, her expression still serious, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "But this changes everything. We're on the brink." "Then jump in," I replied, my eyes never leaving her. "Because if we don't act now, everything will fall apart." The room was silent for a moment, and then the atmosphere began to change. The people on the board began to rummage through the files and documents I had presented, nodding and whispering to each other. People began to realize that I was more than just a protesting girl. I was the only one who could bring justice to this company. A few hours later, I was informed that the authorities had officially begun an investigation into the illegal financial activities that Cassandra and my father had engaged in. The investigation team had gathered enough evidence to proceed with prosecution. However, I knew that the fight was not over. Cassandra would not give up so easily. As for her, I didn't see her shadow all day, but I knew she was preparing for a stealth attack, and I had to be ready to deal with it. When I walked into the office that afternoon, I got a call from Mark. He informed me that Cassandra had contacted a team of top lawyers to try to quash the investigation. She not only wanted to protect her rights, but also wanted to clear the way to fight me. "She's not giving up, Hannah," Mark warned me over the phone. "Cassandra is trying everything to regain control, but don't worry, we're prepared." I smiled coldly. I'm not worried, Mark, because I know her every move. That night, when I returned home, I felt a strange emptiness. Everything seemed to be going in the right direction, but I couldn't help but think about my father. Even though I had decided to seek justice, I still felt an inexplicable pain in my heart. My father, whom I once loved, was now just a part of this conspiracy. When I entered the living room, I saw my father sitting there, his face tired. The light from the table lamp illuminated his face, creating deep shadows in his eyes. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness and despair. "Hannah," he began, his voice hoarse, "why did you do this? Why couldn't you give things a chance?" I looked at him, but didn't answer right away. I walked over and sat down across from him. "I can't live with lies anymore, Dad. Mom built everything for us, and I can't let anyone destroy it for their own ambitions." My dad looked at me for a long moment, and then finally he sighed. "You were right, Hannah. But what are you going to do next?" I pursed my lips, my eyes determined. "I will keep fighting, because I can't let you down." The next day, the official investigation began. The authorities were involved, with the help of lawyers and financial experts that I had prepared. I was also prepared to face the people I had called family, but now I understood that they were no longer the loved ones I thought they were. Meanwhile, Cassandra was starting to feel the change. She was no longer as calm as before. I could see the worry in her eyes every time we met, and I knew, just one step away, everything would change completely. The next day, I sensed a change in the atmosphere. Things seemed to be spiraling out of control for those who tried to maintain power. Cassandra could no longer maintain her calm exterior. She began to show anxiety in her every move, every word, and even in her eyes. Though she remained tough, I could see fear creeping into her mind. I knew I was on the cusp of a battle that none of us could avoid. But there was an indescribable feeling that kept me from stopping. I had gone too far, and no matter the cost, I could not turn back. When I arrived at the company in the morning, the atmosphere was even more tense. I received questioning glances from my mother's former colleagues. They knew that things were changing. They knew that I was no longer the weak girl they thought I was. I was standing on the pinnacle of truth, and there was nothing they could do to stop me. The important board meeting is just a few hours away. This time, I will not wait for anyone's approval. Everything has been decided, and I will bring the truth to light. But before the meeting, I got a call from Mark. His voice was a little tense. "Hannah, we've encountered strong resistance from Cassandra. She's mobilized a team of top lawyers to stop this lawsuit. They're not going to let go of control easily." I straightened, feeling the coldness in my body. "It's okay, Mark. We're prepared, and I won't let her get away this time." I felt no fear, only certainty in my decision. No matter how hard Cassandra tried, I couldn't let her deceive everyone any longer. The board meeting began. I walked into the room, and everyone present turned their eyes to me. The people I used to call my mother's colleagues now had no patience or faith in what I was doing. They all understood that I was not a girl to be trifled with. "We'll begin," I said, my voice filling the room with authority. "I have enough evidence to prove that everything has been rigged this whole time. And today, the truth will be revealed." I didn't need to explain any further. I quietly opened my file and placed it on the table. The documents I had prepared for so long began to be laid out clearly. Illegal funds, offshore transfers, and shady financial contracts were all exposed. I knew that there was nothing left to save everything. You all know that my mother built this company not just with money, but with her heart and soul. And I will not let people like Cassandra and my father destroy everything she has built. I looked at each person in the room, each face stiffening as they realized that I was ready to fight. Cassandra could no longer keep her composure. She sat still, her eyes filled with worry and anger. Every time I opened a new document, She tensed up more. Her eyes were less confident than before. It was her last attempt at resistance, but I knew she had failed. After several long, tense hours, the board finally decided that immediate legal action was necessary. Their decision was irreversible. The company would cooperate with the authorities to fully investigate the incident. All the evidence had been confirmed, and no one could deny this fact. As I walked out of the meeting room, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I was not happy, nor elated. I simply felt that I had fulfilled the mission my mother had given me. Justice had been served. But what I didn't expect was a final attack from Cassandra. When I returned to my office, I found her standing there, defiant. The atmosphere in the room became suffocatingly tense. "You think you won, Hannah?" Cassandra said, her voice filled with bitterness and hatred. I looked at her, not afraid at all. "You have lived a lie for too long, Cassandra, and now it will all end." Cassandra sneered, but her smile was no longer confident. "You don't understand, Hannah. This whole family is falling apart. There's only one person who can save it, and it's not you." "You can say whatever you want," I replied, my eyes hard. "But the truth has been told, and no one can hide it anymore." She looked at me for a moment, then finally turned and walked away. Once again, I realized that this fight was not just about money or power. This was about what my mother left me, and I would protect it to the end. The next day, I received notice that Cassandra had been arrested after the authorities gathered enough evidence of her corruption and financial manipulation. My father was also facing an investigation for his role in those activities. Everything was going according to plan. Even though I won, I don't feel any real victory, because I know that nothing can bring back what has been lost. My mother left too soon, and all I can do is protect her legacy. But a part of me still feels an indescribable sadness when I think about what happened. My life is not the same anymore. I have grown up, not because I want to, but because life forced me to. And no matter what challenges I face, I will never forget the lessons my mother left me. As things began to settle down, I realized that I had achieved what I needed, but there was a sense of satisfaction missing. It was the inevitable emptiness after a long battle, a battle in which I had given up too much to win. Cassandra was arrested and charged with corruption, financial fraud, and other crimes. My father was also under investigation. Everything was on the right track. The company I had planned to start over from scratch was starting to recover. But in my heart, things were still not right. My mother was no longer here to see this, and I felt that even if I won, I would not be able to fill the void she left behind. One late afternoon, as I sat in my study, there was a soft knock on the door. I looked up and saw Mr. Richard standing in the doorway. He was not the person I expected to see, but I knew that if he came, there must be a reason. "Do you have a moment, Hannah?" he asked, his voice as heavy as it had been when we had faced each other at the board meeting. I nodded, motioned for him to come in and sit down. "Of course, Mr. Richard. What is it you want to say?" He sat down across from me, his eyes tired. "You know, what we have done all this time is not just a personal victory. It is your mother's victory. And your victory, but perhaps it is also our greatest failure." I listened to him in silence. His words really made me stop and think. I had won, but the price was too high. "You have changed a lot over the years, Hannah. But there is no denying that the price of that change is not only the betrayals, but also the loss of your mother. Are you happy with what you have done?" I shook my head, unable to answer immediately. I'm not happy, Mr. Richard. My mother is no longer here to see what I've done. I just feel that, even though I won, it can't fill the void in my heart." Richard looked at me knowingly. "Then you must know that winning is not always the ultimate goal. Your mother built a legacy not just to have this company, but so that you could live up to the values she taught you. Don't forget that. A few days later, I began to think about what Richard had said. My mother didn't just want me to win this fight. She had always wanted me to be true to myself, not to be controlled by greed or revenge. I had been so caught up in trying to get her justice that I had forgotten that sacrifice, patience, and love were the values she really wanted me to protect. And then, I decided that I would change a little. Instead of continuing to run the company with a vengeful spirit, I would spend time fixing the mistakes in the family to reconcile the broken relationships, especially with my father. Even though he was wrong, he was still my father, and I could not continue to live in hatred forever. One evening, I went to my father's house, where he was living after everything changed. It was not as luxurious as it used to be, but it was still the house where I grew up. When he opened the door, I could see the tiredness and pain in his eyes. "What are you doing here, Hannah?" he asked, his voice a little surprised. I took a deep breath. "I came to talk, Dad. I want us to face what happened together. Mom is gone, and I don't want to live in hatred anymore." Dad looked at me for a moment, and then finally he invited me in. We sat in the living room, silent for a long time, before he spoke. "You know, no matter what, I will always love your mother. I was wrong, and I made you suffer so much, but I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at him, my heart no longer heavy. "I know, Dad, but the most important thing is that we find a way to forgive, no matter how hard it is." A few weeks later, I was able to start over. The company was still recovering from its turmoil, but I was no longer just an executive. I was the guardian of the values my mother had left behind. I would not allow the mistakes of the past to destroy the legacy she had built. Cassandra was convicted and facing life in prison. She could not escape the truth I had exposed. My father, though responsible for his past mistakes, was the only father I had. We could not undo the past, but we could rebuild the future. On my mother's birthday, I went to the cemetery. It was the first time I had been back since everything had ended. I stood in front of her grave, looking at the wildflowers I had placed on the headstone. My eyes watered as I thought about all she had done for me. "Mom," I whispered, "I did what you asked. The company is safe, your legacy is protected. I wish you could see that." I sat there for a moment, feeling as if time had stopped. Then, I stood up, feeling a strange peace in my soul. I had won, not because I had defeated anyone, but because I had found peace in my heart. Hannah, despite winning the legal battle, ultimately realizes that her mother's true legacy is not just the company, but her human values, honesty, and perseverance. This story is about growth, forgiveness, and the inner strength to face challenges, no matter how difficult they may be.